A lot of early games today. A lot of early games. This one I don't think has gone off yet. 7-16 Toledo, or if it has, Toledo plus the 3. Here's a late game for sure. Villanova, Connecticut, under 135.5 game, 744. I don't love that game, man. I'm seeing when I see the recreational bettors and the sharp bettors all on the same side, it makes me nervous during conference tournaments because the lines are so tight that shouldn't happen as often. And anytime it's happened to date, it hasn't gone all that well. But both sides are on under in the Villanova game. Also 736 under SMU and Clemson. What else do I have for you? 764 under 147 Charlotte, Florida Atlantic. A couple sides for you. 786 Iona on the money line and -1. Also 739 over 145 in Marquette and Xavier. And where was that one? One more side I thought I had for you. Oh, Stanford, 733 Stanford plus the 11 in that game. Still a little early. The weekend should be really, really busy, worth of moves. But so far, that's pretty much what we've gotten down on for Thursday's action.
The Sooners won 81-75 last night, a back-and-forth battle with Georgia. The last 8 minutes, Oklahoma took control. They went on a 16-0 run in that ball game. And I did a video about that game yesterday. And I'm going to start with some of what I said in that video yesterday, because the Sooners are 6-0 against the spread their last 6. They're all as dogs. 4 of them have been outright upset wins during that span. To be Texas, Missouri State, Mississippi State, or 3 of them outright upset wins during that span. They had a 1-point loss to the same Kentucky team they'll face here. That was a game they led with 20 seconds left. They had a 3-point loss to Ole Miss, another game that they led with less than 20 seconds left. So they've been in every contest. And you're talking about Oklahoma catching points. They've been a monster. They built a fairly significant betting bandwagon in that sense. They've got NBA talent. The Frost, Jeremiah Fears, 29 points last night, a huge contest. And this is the Sooners team. Again, they started 13-0, and then they went in the SEC and lost their first 4, went 3-10 mid-February before this surge. But they're surging right now, and their full season stats are lying, They're in must-win mode, and they're playing their best ball of the year right now. That's not an easy team to fade. That being said, the only way I can play this game is to fade Oklahoma. Kentucky's got home court advantage in the SEC tournament. Legit, all right? Their crowd will show, all right? And the Wildcats used to own this tournament. They won in 2010, 2011, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. 1 win in 2019, no turning in 2020. They lost the first game in 21, 1 win in 2022 and lost to Vandy the first game last year, lost to A&M 2 years ago, lost to A&M the first game last year. Kentucky's recent SEC tournament performance, very different from their historical. This is Mark Pope's first season as the Wildcats head coach. In his introductory press conference, he talked about, winning this tournament. All right. Quote, "It's Kentucky. There's no fan base like this in the world. We really devoted everything we humanly can we're devoted to doing everything we can humanly possible as a team to make that happen." All right. It feels like Kentucky's going to make a run. It feels like Kentucky is a team I don't want to step in front of in this tournament right now. So for all the success that Oklahoma has had, and including against Kentucky, it's Kentucky or pass for me in this one. I don't want the dog when the favorite is very, very interested in coming in with something to prove themselves.
We got 5 guests on today. Let's start right off the bat with Baylor, 19-13 this year, playing a 24-7 Texas Tech team. It's -6.5-ish for Texas Tech. The total in this game, 141. How do you suggest we bet this?
Yeah, looking at the Odds Logic live odds screen, I'm seeing 6.5 pretty much across the board, 141, the prevailing total here. And this is a scenario where one team is a lock to make the tournament. The other team, they probably played themselves off the bubble yesterday. But nonetheless, Baylor certainly with, in theory, more to play for than Texas Tech in this tournament. And look, they were pretty dominant in yesterday's game. Jeremy Roach, a guy who played at Duke, who's now playing at Baylor, quote, "Obviously it's a 1-game season now in March. just taking advantage of just setting the tone, making them play to our pace. That's the biggest thing coming to March. You don't want to be behind and scratch and claw your way back into a game. You want to impose your will early, and I think we did that tonight. Now, nobody played hard minutes in that game for Baylor. I mean, all 5 starters did play 30-plus minutes, but they weren't hard minutes. And frankly, when we talk about these tournament back-to-back settings, I worry much more about fatigue day 3, day 4 than I do day 2. And this is only day 2 for Baylor. And, of course, last night's game was pretty easy. They had a big run before halftime. K-State had no answer. Now, the first meeting was all Texas Tech. And after the game, Baylor head coach Scott Drew had this to say, quote, he said, they're going to make a run in the Final Four. They're a great team. We're going to do some adjustments. I don't think anyone is unbeatable. But it was certainly talk about how good this opponent is. And, of course, Baylor wasn't fully healthy in that contest. It was Roach's first game back after his second concussion of the season, and they were without VJ Edgecombe in that game. Edgecombe, a potential lottery pick next year. We like teams with NBA talent in tournament settings. And Edgecombe, of course, last night, 19 points, 10 boards. The quotes from Grant McCaslin from Texas Tech. This one stood out to me. These guys really enjoy being around each other every day. It's real. There's a lot of pressure on them for different reasons. There's a lot of strain. I worry about Texas Tech's intensity for tonight's game. It's Baylor or pass for this better.
Teddy Covers likes Baylor plus 6.5 against Texas Tech. That game you can find on ESPN.
So right now, looking at the Odds Logic live odds screen, we've seen a little bit of Golden State money, 6.5 at the open. Now we're seeing 7s, even a couple of 7.5 popping up. Total sitting in the 234 range. There's some variance on that. And this has been a Sacramento series of late. They won 5 straight until they met right after the All-Star break. And that game was all Warriors, 132-108. Part of the Jimmy Butler factor. I mean, obviously, Warriors 9-1 since the All-Star break. The only loss during that span, by the way, came to Philadelphia, of all teams. And Butler's quotes for the Warriors are as positive gets. Quote, I think it's everything that I expected, everything I actually dreamed of, too, if I'm being brutally honest. They just want to win. There ain't no individual goals here. They don't care who scores. They don't care who gets triple doubles. None of that. All I want to do is win a championship. Butler talking about the Warriors' lack of size. Quote, we're faster than a lot of teams. We have a lot of high-level IQ guys. We don't use the lack of size as an excuse. We're expected to win, no matter who's in the lineup, no matter how tall anyone is. We are expected to win. We've been doing that lately. And I have a feeling we will continue to do it. Of course, the Warriors are also supposed to get Jonathan Kuminga back in the lineup. He's missed the last 31 games with a bad ankle. He's likely to return tonight as well. That could be why this number moved from 6.5 to 7. So Golden State's playing good ball. They've been bet on. They blew out Sacramento the last time these two teams met, even though the series history points, recent series history tilts towards the Kings. But from a spot standpoint, this game screams Sacramento. All right, the Kings have 5 2-game losing streaks since the calendar turned to 2025. They have 0 3-game losing streaks. They've bounced back very well off multiple defeats, and they're coming off an ugly loss. You know, a game where the Knicks shot 54% from the floor. Knicks led by 35 in the fourth quarter of that game on Sacramento's home court. First day of the overtime loss against the Clippers, the game where they blew a 7-point lead in the last 2 minutes and then lost by a bucket in OT, or by a point in OT, and then the blowout loss to the Knicks the next night. You know, Malik Monk, who just got back from injury, quote, they just outworked us, came in and were out physicaling us. They just punked us tonight. We didn't get any loose ball. They were beating us to every loose ball. They just outplayed us. So they've had 2 days off. They just got punked in a game where they were outworked and outplayed. You know, this is a Kings spot. So while I'm not excited about stepping in front of Golden State, it's the only way to play this game. Sacramento or pass for this better. I'm expecting a battle, not a blowout.
Teddy Covers, outstanding segment.
Well, we're going to be looking at a player prop here in Brook Lopez, over 11.5 points. He's been very aggressive without Bobby Portis in the lineup, going over in 9 of his last 12 games outside of some tough matchups against Orlando and Cleveland. The other one, a 30-point blowout against Dallas that limited his minutes. He's also seen great shot volume with 10-plus field goal attempts in 7 of his last 11 games. Now he's facing a Lakers team that's really decimated with injuries, going to be lacking some size tonight. No LeBron James, no Hachimura. Jackson Hayes has already been ruled out as well. They're going to be busy trying to contain Giannis in this game, and it's going to give Lopez some open looks. And when he's seen this type of shot volume, he's cleared this total more often than not, especially without Bobby Portis on the court.
Let's talk main event, because I already bet that one. And I know it's a rematch from the 2 years ago, Dolidze and Vettori. And Vettori was like a minus 275 favorite. That's what he opened. Closed around minus 250. And still very close fight, but he got the unanimous decision. Okay. Since then, he only had one fight where he lost another unanimous decision, and his opponent broke the record for middleweight strikes. So he landed 241 shots on Vettori. Okay. Dolidze since then has beaten 2 mediocre opponents, 2 guys he should have beaten. So based on those short-term recency biased results, the lines dropped significantly from that first one, from like a minus 250 close to now a minus 150 for Vettori. And it reminds people of what happened last week when Fiziev was out for about the same amount of time, comes back against Gaethje. He was a much bigger favorite in the first fight. He lost split decision, a lot slower favorite against Gaethje in the second fight. What happens? Gaethje beats him. The narrative is same situation. Vettori's coming off the long layoff, that the line's adjusted for a reason. It's warranted. I'm telling you now, it's not warranted. Vettori's as tough as nails. And the guys that he's lost to is the elite at middleweight. That's the difference. His strength of schedule, it's not even close when you look at both of these fighters. And more importantly, he's a guy that's never been finished. And the last time around was a 3-round fight. This is a 5-round fight. And the one thing about Dolidze is he looks like a stacked, like huge middleweight. But those muscles takes oxygen, man. And the longer the fight goes, the deeper the waters and the more it benefits the Vettori side. So I really like Vettori. I think he should be a 2-1 favorite in this fight where he wins 2 out of 3 times. So I really like Vettori there. And just got a move from one of the guys I respect most that I bet for in MMA. And he just gave me an over in the Choi fight. But Lejos and Choi, we went over 1.5, about 135. It's probably going to be minus 140 on your screen now because we just bet it. And I agree with that side. I think this one has a lot higher probability of going to a decision than ending early. So those are 2 UFC plays for Saturday's card.
Waldo Cortes-Acosta minus 170. On the comeback here, you've got Ryan Spann plus 150. Now, I was pretty surprised that this line is where it sits here, where you've got, a sizable favor here at Waldo, where both of these guys do have multiple flaws, and that's just going to provide a lot of variance in a fight like this. Now, with that being said, Waldo does have some good boxing. He does utilize the jab well. He does utilize also good volume, and that's kind of where he has found some success. But I think another reason why this line is wide is due to the fact that Waldo's 12-1 in his career, 5-1 in the UFC, and that always gives your, average bettor. They look at, records, that always pushes them that way. But you look at who Waldo has beat, and it's probably some of the worst heavyweights that the UFC has ever signed. I mean, he's beating guys like Jared Vanderaa, 1-6 in the UFC. Chase Sherman, 2-6 in the UFC. Lucas Brzeski, 1-5 in the UFC. And even Andrei Arlovsky, who's a known guy, but he was 45 years old on an 0-4 run. And then also Rubelis Spain, who also got cut. All of these guys are not even in the organization anymore. The only guy that he lost to was De Lima, where De Lima utilized the leg kicks and ended up getting some takedowns. And I think that could be a path here for Ryan Spann. Now, on the other side here, Ryan Spann, he's moving from light heavyweight to heavyweight. And that, to me, I think is actually a good move. Spann is a guy that has definitely shown bad cardio. I think his massive frame, he drains himself to get to the light heavyweight division. Now he's going to be in the heavyweight division, and I think he finds success there. And, he's had ups and downs in the UFC, but at least he's fighting UFC caliber fighters and guys that have wins in the UFC and have a career in the UFC. And that's also where I look at it, that Spann is the more well-rounded fighter. He's going to have the bigger power. He's also going to have the grappling advantages and the more dangerous fighter between these two guys, where he's got 22 victories, 19 by stoppage. I think he's the more explosive fighter. I think the takedowns will be there. And I'm just not high on Waldo at all. I do think that Ryan Spann probably gets the job done inside the distance, but I'm comfortable with this plus 150 number here. I think this line is off, and I think Ryan Spann gets the job done. Yeah, so we've got Damon Blackshear here. He's a massive minus 485 favorite. On the comeback here, you've got Cody Gibson plus 370. Now, both of these fighters do have very similar skill set when you're looking at it. You've got both of these guys. They're going to look to wrestle. They're going to look to, have some grappling. They do have some decent striking, and they do both like to push some type of pace. Now, the issue here is the fact that all those categories I just said all favor Damon Blackshear. This is a terrible matchup for Cody Gibson, and obviously the line is indicating that, and that's also why we're going to get creative here on how we're going to place our money. Now, for Cody Gibson, this is a spot where Cody does have some good striking, but he likes to lean on his wrestling. He likes to lean on the grappling if the fight is really, whether it's getting tough or he wants to change a pace. And he's just not going to have that here against Damon Blackshear. Blackshear is a very high-level jiu-jitsu guy. He's got fantastic grappling overall. And I think that also, if this fight does get to the ground, he's going to have slicker transitions, better reversals. He's also going to be a guy that, just is going to be flat out better when they're talking about the grappling and scrambling. And I think that also being the more dangerous fighter, and that's really where I'm going with this play, is that, you've got Damon 15 victories. You've got 12 by stoppage, and also the fact that Cody right now, I feel like is on a decline. Even though he's coming off some wins, I think he's still on the decline, 37 years old. And also you look at Damon where, he's the same thing where he doesn't have the greatest record for these guys, but he's 3-3-1 in the UFC. All three of his wins do come by finish. His 3 losses and the draw were all against very strong opponents. Montel Jackson, Farhad Basharat, Mario Batista, who he fought on short notice, still had a good account of himself. And even the draw was against Yusuf Zalal, who I am very high on. So this is a spot here where I think Damon is going to be able to outpace, outpressure, outwork him, and probably find the finish on the feet or on the ground here. So I do like Damon Blackshear getting off the minus 485 number. Damon inside the distance is sitting around plus 175, and I think that's a likely path for him to get that finish.
You guys aren't going to believe this, but we're going to take Contavious Caldwell-Pope under 1.5 made three-pointers. I know. Shocking. But it just keeps hitting. He's gone under in 17 out of 20 games. The last 10 games, he's only attempting 2.4 three-point shots. He's shooting 32% from threes. Prez, in KCP's last game, he had 0 shot attempts. I don't mean 0 three-point shot attempts. He shot the ball 0 times. His job is to facilitate and play good defense. It's not to score. We will keep riding this, even though it's minus 200. Yeah, I'm going to take Hatton over DeChambeau. This course that they're playing is truly insane. It's like a fantasy land. Like it seriously looks like a cartoon. And it does not set up well for Bryson DeChambeau. He cannot overpower this course. There's dog legs galore. There's water everywhere. You got to be delicate and accurate. That's not really his game. He was -5 here last year. Hatton was 6 shots better. Hatton hasn't looked great, but 6th, 23rd, and 20th. Bryson's finishes have gotten worse each tournament. He finished 20th last week. This course is just terrible for Bryson's game. Love Hatton in this matchup. Yeah, Ryan Donato under 2.5 shots on goal, under in 9 out of 10 games, under in 62% of games this season. He's only getting 3.5 shot attempts per game, not firing the puck a bunch, but went under in his last game against San Jose. So all trends point to another under here for Donato.